Welcome to Coast View, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such an amazing place to live, work, and play, and Mississippi for that matter. Tell you what, we celebrate here every single morning on SuperTalk Gulf Coast and on SuperTalk TV across the state. The incredible people who are making this such a special place. And we have my friend Robert St. John coming up here in just a second. But before I do, I want to share something with you. It's from my friend Stacy Waldrop. I quote stuff she posts a lot because she's really a special and positive person. But here's what she posted. It's called "It's the Little Things" by Tiffany Mollet. Waking up to the sound of your loved ones, putting on the comfiest clothes for the day, the first sip of coffee in the morning, the sounds of birds chirping outside, and the way the day starts over, no matter what happened yesterday. Oh, darling, it's the little things that keep you going, no matter how challenging life is right now. I hope you always seek out joy and find gratitude even when life starts to weigh you down. There's so much to be thankful for, especially in the little things. I think we move too fast in our lives sometimes, and we don't appreciate the moment. We don't take the time to pause and do a little meditation. I think the mornings over a cup of coffee is a wonderful time to do that. I know that's when I do it myself. And I think the older we get, the more we appreciate what's going on around us. In fact, I was just having a conversation with my son, Justin, who is up in New York and doing really well with his career. And I told him, I said, man, just don't take this moment for granted. It's very special. And he just sent me back a note and said that he realizes that. But, you know, I tell you, just you can't do anything about yesterday. You can really, really do a lot about this moment. And you can plan for tomorrow, but not worry too much about tomorrow. That's best advice I can give you. And it's really kind of the way that my next guest lives his life, to be quite honest with you. Does a lot of planning for the future, doesn't worry about yesterday, and he really soaks up the moment. I don't know many people who soak up the moment better than Robert St. John, a restaurateur, chef, columnist. He's an author. He's kind of a Renaissance man, the way I would describe him. But before we go any further, let me welcome Robert back to Coast View. It's been a while, my friend. How are you?
Ricky, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. No place I'd rather be on a morning than speaking with you. It's good to catch up.
You're a good friend. And what I like about Coast View, someone once told us early in the process, this is kind of the advice that shows like this are given by the radio industry, and that is, imagine that you're sitting at a table, drinking a cold glass of tea or a nice wine and having a conversation with someone, and you're just letting other people listen in. That's what you and I do when we're together. Man, we got a lot to talk about. I'll kind of give you a quick outline. I want to know the latest on your businesses. I see that recently you posted something about Austin Summerall. I got a comment I want to make about that. You've made it to Spain and Italy. You finally got to travel again after a 2-year hiatus, and we'll explain to people why this is really important to you, and in particular, the Tuscany area of Italy's become sort of a second home to you. And your extra table effort, which I can't say enough good things about, and the fact that you're leaner. You're sort of a leaner, meaner Robert coming on the show today. So why don't we start with that? How are you doing, and have you lost some weight?
Yeah, I've lost about 55 pounds. Got about 20 more to go. I put on a good bit of COVID weight there, and probably if I look at photographs of 2019, 2018, it's probably a little before COVID too. It's an easy thing to blame it on, but I said when I turn 60, I want to be in the best health I've been in a few decades, and so started working towards that and pushing away from things at the table. I had breakfast with Julia Child years ago out in Colorado, and we talked. The two things I can remember from that conversation, I actually had breakfast with her twice, two different times. With the two things I took away, the first time we had breakfast together, we talked about scrambling eggs and how you can really judge a chef a lot of times by two things. One, how they prepare chicken, because if you can really, really do something with chicken, you can it's easy to work with really fresh fish or a prime cut of beef or veal or things like that have a lot of character. But it's what you do with chicken that can really impress someone. And the other thing we talked about was scrambled eggs and how to cook the perfect scrambled egg. But another takeaway is I asked her, how do you all this French food that you're eating, and it was very, her that was 1960s, 1970s, very very heavy French food, and she said I don't deny myself, but I just push away after a minute. So
Yeah.
you eat what you want, but you just have to be. And I'm not a person who really is good on, I'm kind of all out in most things I do, so it's not easy to push away from the table. But it's 60,
Well,
60.
okay, so you're a chef. You enjoy other restaurants. You like, for example, I spent, I was publisher at the Times Picayune, so I spent a lot of time in New Orleans. And when you go to New Orleans, man, you indulge. And when you go to Italy and Spain, you indulge. And it's always fascinating to me that chefs are able to actually lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah. So typically when I lead tours over in Europe, usually 2 to 3 months out of the year in normal years, obviously we had a 2-year hiatus there, but typically when I'm over there, I lose if I'm over there 7 weeks or so, I'll lose 15 pounds. And it's not because I'm not eating, because we eat a lot. I lead tours with a lot of folks from the coast, probably people friends have traveled with me over there, and we eat. I mean, it's a full immersion into Italian food and wine and culture and lifestyle. But the thing is that when I'm over there, I walk a lot. Don't necessarily walk as much over here. So probably average, 3, 4, 5 miles a day over there. But also, it's that Mediterranean diet. There's pasta and bread, but especially in Tuscany, the Tuscans are very aware of the digestive system and how your body processes food. And excuse me, they're always thinking about that. And the course structure of their meals is like that. They'll have kind of a first antipasta, first course that kind of gets the palate going, and then they have the pasta course next. And we can talk about flour and my theory on the difference in flour and why our bodies today don't necessarily react to European version versus the American version. But then there's a protein and then a salad. Dessert is typically nothing real heavy. And then there's coffee afterwards. And they don't do, it's things like they wouldn't put any dairy product in coffee after about 10 a.m. in the morning. So typically after lunch, they'll have some type of dessert maybe, and then just an espresso, just a little bit, nothing with cream in it. And so that's kind of part of it. But I think the walking part is too. My goddaughter, who's Italian, was over here staying with us for about 3 months in the first part of the year. And I eat breakfast every morning. We have a breakfast concept called the Midtowner, which is across from the university here in Hattiesburg. My house is probably 2 miles away or whatever. And she would like to ride with me to breakfast, but then she'd want to walk back to the house every morning. And that's just, that's something that we just don't do. So there's a whole lifestyle difference. And so that's kind of, I think, why I lose when I'm over there. This time I only lost 5 pounds. I think because I had lost a lot before I went over there, and I had lost all the easy pounds before I headed over.
So we'll get into a little bit more deeper immersion on what you did and where you went and all that. But the fact that your son's actually over in Italy now, working with a chef, and we'll come to that as well. I mentioned about Austin Summerall. You made a post about him. I love what he's doing at the White Pillars. He's been on the show a couple of times. In fact, my wife and I got a gift certificate from our kids to go there and have dinner. So I'm looking forward to heading there with Ann soon to have dinner. But he's done some cool things. But what I like about it is that you've always supported other chefs, no matter whether they're your next door neighbor or all the way down here in Biloxi. That's always been really important to you, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's we have this button here says "Eat Local," and I wear this every day unless I'm going to a wedding or a funeral, and it's something that we really need to support, and it's a theory we support. So I'm all for local independent operators, whether they're chefs or just restaurateurs. And Austin is nailing it down on the coast, man. It's certainly one of my top two or three restaurants on the coast, but he's probably one of the top two or three chefs in the state. He's very talented. He's got a lot of touch, and touch is very important in cooking.
He's really innovative, and he is so passionate, which you've taught me and others in this business have taught me. You got to be passionate to be in this business. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Robert St. John. Welcome back to Coast View. I'm my friend Robert St. John. We're just visiting and catching up. He's kind of a Renaissance man, and you'll understand why if you haven't heard me have conversations with him before. With the last time we spoke, I think it was actually in December, but we did a full review of your Walter Anderson project, the documentary and the book back in November. Even today, when you bring it up, people are incredibly impressed with the book. It really changed the way I see Walter Anderson, to be honest with you. I knew a lot about him, but the documentary was the deepest dive into his life and what he had to say and the people who were closest to him, et cetera. You look back on that project and you really still feel incredibly positive. I bet the feedback you get even today is still great.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud to have been a part of that, and really a small part. My partner in that project was a guy named Anthony Thaxton, who I've worked with for over 20 years. Our TV show, Palate to Palate, and the new show that's coming out called Yonderlust, he's the director and the editor and a producer of that. And so we had a great working relationship. And it was actually while we were filming an episode for Palate to Palate in the Walter Anderson Museum that the idea for the documentary, which was the first idea, we did a documentary, which now has actually been nominated for a regional Emmy. We head to Atlanta for those awards in June. We got our fingers crossed there. And I was a producer of the documentary, but he did all of the heavy lifting, and the same with the book. And it's one of the more interesting projects I've ever been a part of, but also one of the things I'm most proud to have been a small part of. And we wanted, like you said, we wanted to tell the whole story. We told the story in a very heavy way from the family's perspective. And it was my kind of guidepost from the start, is that I wanted people in Portland, Oregon, and people in Portland, Maine to know, and everybody in between to know who Walter Anderson was and what he meant and means to the American art scene, and what an amazing talent he was. And I think a lot of times we can't see the forest for the pine trees in some things like this. You talk to some people, even people from Ocean Springs, and like, oh yeah, he was crazy. I mean, that's kind of the first easy.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Thing they do, and it's so much more than a 2-year period of his life where he had some struggles after contracting malaria.
Right.
He's certainly eccentric, but you can't be as productive and prolific as he was, and you can't be as big a thinker as he was. He's a big thinker.
Right.
He's a great writer. And so I'm actually publishing and writing another afterword to a book that John Anderson, the youngest son, has been working on for several years that'll come out this year, called The Bicycle Logs. There's the Horn Island logs, and now there's so much. He rode his bike to Texas. I mean, he rode his bike. It was nothing for him to ride from Ocean Springs to New Orleans. Pardon me. So that book coming out this fall, there are two books. A book that I'm a part of, a small part of, is that, The Bicycle Logs of Walter Anderson. And then I have a cookbook coming out, a breakfast cookbook this fall. But we this whole Walter Anderson project, bringing kind of notable Mississippians to light, has kind of started a spark in us. And so Anthony and I are also, our next project is on Eudora Welty. And so we're kind of doing the same treatment. We're I'm producing a documentary along with Anthony, who will direct and edit and produce and write as well. And then there'll be a companion book that comes along with that. And it is just as it was where the Andersons, all family members were so gracious and opened up the vault. They opened up everything, all the correspondence, as did the museum. We're getting the same kind of participation with the Welty Estate and the Department of Archives and family members. So it'll be a deep, deep dive into Welty. There had been 20 books written on Walter Anderson. There hadn't been a lot on Eudora Welty.
Mm-hmm.
So
hey, listen, I'm gonna plant a seed for you.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to do what was probably the last deep dive media conversation with Bill Luckett. And as you know, Bill Luckett and Morgan Freeman started the Ground Zero Blues Club. And in that conversation, if you didn't see it, I'll send it to you so you can kind of get a sense of it. But in that conversation, we go through the whole process of what Morgan and Bill wanted to create and this deep knowledge of the impact of blues on, for example, the European blues, scene, like the impact on people like Bob Dylan and Keith Richards and Robert Plant. I know you're a music aficionado, Eric Clapton for sure. This whole notion of Robert Johnson and how he impacted the scene, and all these others with the Ground Zero Blues Club and the Delta Blues Museum, and how there's just incredible story to tell about the newest sort of Grammy winners like Kingfish Ingram, and then some of the oldest guys. But it centers in this conversation around Morgan and Bill Luckett and what they wanted to achieve. God, there's some fodder there for something very big.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of on this notable Mississippians kind of train right now, and there's several available. We've talked about doing Faulkner next, and we'll go back to the well as long as people want to keep watching, and as long as PBS wants to keep airing them, we'll keep producing them. At least
in this case, you got Morgan Freeman, who's still kicking, so you got an opportunity to really tap into him. Right. How's your businesses doing? We'll do this quickly. This part.
Yeah. Business is good. We're the restaurant business is really, we just got through a 2-year period where it was the most brutal time in the history of the restaurant business, like in the history of the restaurant, to be in the restaurant business. So we're glad to be kind of coming out on the other end of that. There's still there are a lot of challenges anyway in the restaurant business, just owning and operating a restaurant. There are not many businesses where there are more ways to lose money than there are to make money, like the restaurant business. But the challenges today are the labor market is almost it's hard to even explain what a dearth there is in the labor market. I'm not sure why that is, or I know there for a long time there was a lot of government assistance. For a long time there needed to be.
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, all that's gone. But there, the kind of the capitalist system hadn't restarted yet, and so the labor challenges are great, and I can imagine on the coast with so many service jobs available down there that is pretty brutal down there too. I talked to Austin about that the other day, and he's fully staffed, and his staff's in good shape. So maybe it's shaping up around other people. The supply chain, there are issues there now, and then just other than labor, food costs.
Yeah,
I mean, some of these proteins have gone up like 30%.
That's unreal.
Years, and so
Austin was
business there, but I think not a lot of people making a lot of money on the business. So
if I remember Austin's story, his core group kind of kept together. And
Yeah.
I think the story of your story, your core group kind of stayed together. However, you've got a periphery of really important employees that churn and typically churn in a normal scenario, but then you add the pandemic to it, and it was just terrible. But I tell you, I don't care if you're talking about service jobs or you're talking about highly technical jobs at Ingalls. Every single employer is having to get incredibly innovative today, and it's been a really big challenge.
Yeah, there's just a new paradigm, and we have 400 employees throughout the company. We got a couple of more projects in the works, and so we're about to add to that. And I think that's exactly, and it's funny you bring that up because I was thinking about it this morning. Our training process has to change. The makeup of the labor available now is different, and so you have to kind of change how you manage that and how that's hired and so it's just a different environment. Early on in 2020, I remember thinking, everybody keeps talking about this new normal, new normal. And I said I refuse to believe in a new normal. I wanted to get back just to how it is, but we're in a new normal. As much as I would like to deny that and just kind of whistle past the graveyard on it, it's the world is different now, and we gotta treat it differently, and to be a responsible business person, and the decisions I make, there, 400 people and their families depend on that. So
and it is the world. I mean, a study was done around the world that showed that 50% of current employees, were either thinking about leaving or going to leave as a result of what they learned during the pandemic. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Robert St. John. See you after this break. Welcome back to Coast View. I'm having a terrific conversation with my friend, restaurateur, chef, columnist, author, and so on, world traveler, Robert St. John. It's always great to check in with him. Robert, I had an opportunity recently to check in with Oliver Diaz. I don't know if you're following him or not.
no,
But former Supreme Court justice, literally traveling the world. He and his wife. They were in Bali when we connected before, but. Man, it is truly remarkable. But anyway, what he comes back is similar observation you make, but I think with what's going on in Ukraine today, people feel slightly closer, or maybe a lot more closer to those people, and maybe they dislike Putin more than they ever have. But his observation is the world is small. The world is really small, and at the end of the day, we're very similar people. We have similar values. We want to take care of our families. We want to. We want to find ways to enjoy our lives. What you found in Tuscany, though, was incredibly unique, and that is that the people in Tuscany are very much like the people in Mississippi, and it really drives this point home that when you travel and you gain perspective, the world is really small, and we're very dang similar, aren't we?
yeah, really, it's 100% true. I did one of the better things I'll ever do, at least for my family. And you and I have talked about this a lot. In 2011, I took my wife and my 10-year-old son and my 14-year-old daughter. We flew to Sweden, bought a Volvo, and spent the next 6 months driving around, 17 countries and 72 cities on 2 continents. And it was the greatest thing I'll ever do for my family. And it instilled in them a little bit of a wanderlust, but certainly, like you say, an appreciation for other people and other cultures, and it makes the world a little smaller, really, like you said. And one of the first things that hit me, we went really hard early on. We started in Gothenburg, Sweden, and about 6 weeks later, we were in Istanbul, Turkey. So we went really, really hard, and we kind of came up through Greece and that Adriatic coast into Vienna. And when we came into Tuscany for the first time, we had been traveling pretty hard for 2 months, and it was the first time we kind of had a collective kind of and we spent 3 weeks there, and that was one of the first things I realized, that Tuscany is a lot like the American South. I mean, it's an agrarian society, but instead of grapes and olives, instead of soybeans and cotton, it's grapes and olives, and the people are very hospitable. They're very friendly. They're very conversational. They're great storytellers. Um, the hospitality is a lot like it is over here. They love to eat. They love to share a meal, and family is really big. And that falls through. I'm sure you could name 100 other countries or regions in other countries where it's similar to what we have here in the South. But if you think about it, the rest of America is not quite like that. I mean, there are other agrarian societies. They may not be as hospitable, or they may not be as family oriented, or as friendly, or it's all that. The South, I think we check all the boxes there, and that's why Tuscany really speaks to me still, and why we keep going back.
Oliver also wrote this, and I think you'll believe it and feel it completely. He said that traveling has taught me that humans are social creatures. We live in communities and are surrounded by others. We strive for friendships and relationships. We need those connections with other people. And he goes on from there. But when you're in Tuscany, just as much as you would see in Hattiesburg or here on the coast, there's a friendliness, a wanting to connect. There's a social aspect to it. And other than maybe obviously a different language, and certainly an accent for those who speak English, it's incredibly similar in that way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I will tell you, it was always that way in my experience, but even more so now. Like going back now, I do tours. I lead tours over. I'm not a tour guide. I'm a travel host. We have tour guides over in these areas we go to, which is all over Italy and most recently Spain. But it's now, because so much of Italy's economy is based on tourism, and it's still, the government is still a little socialistic. It's not a lot like ours, and so there wasn't a lot of government assistance during that shutdown, and people weren't traveling, and so now when people go over, the Italians are so happy, and they already did a great job, more so than the French and others, of really welcoming visitors and guests. But nowadays, man, they're so grateful. People were actually thank you for being here. We kept hearing that, and we heard that in Spain too. And the people we travel with are almost all exclusively Southerners. Not all Mississippians, but there's a lot of Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas. And so we hear comments too. We travel in groups of 25. We hear comments too that, and your people are so happy, and they're so friendly, and they're so nice. And what it is, it's just kind of that Southern culture and Southern attitude just meeting the same thing across the sea.
That's so interesting. You mentioned Spain, and just I'll mention one other thing about Oliver. To give you a sense of how he and his wife immerse themselves where they go, they walked the entire Camino, Camino de Santiago, over 700 miles. Yeah. They walked it. That's so cool. They're serious about that stuff.
There's a pilgrimage route in Italy too that's been taken forever that leads to Rome, and a lot of it goes through the area. They call it the pilgrimage route over there. It goes through the area where we stay. We stay in a little small town called Barberino Tavernelli when we're in Tuscany. And the beauty of that place when we stay there is that there are, unless if you're counting us, we're the only tourists that are going to be there all year long. And so it's real. We kind of do a deep dive and immersion into Italian culture and food, and not the tourist stuff. But yeah, the pilgrimage route right there.
I have a sense of what that looks like, in the sense that you're talking about wine and bread and olives, similar to the countryside of Croatia. When you go up in these rolling hills, and how it looks and how it feels, and it's quaint, it's beautiful. It's a lot of it's rural, rural in the truest sense.
Croatia is beautiful. I mean, Croatia, if you think about it, because the Adriatic's here, and you've got Italy here, and just across the Adriatic is Croatia. So there's not a lot of difference in a lot of the the people and the places and the sentiment and everything. Dubrovnik is a beautiful old town, a double-walled city with marble everywhere. It just glows amber at night. Before I went there, I think in 2011, all I knew was kind of the war that happened in the 90s, and I'm thinking Croatia, why would anybody want to go here? And then you go, and it's just beautiful.
I had the same feeling. I had the same feeling. But when we went, we immersed ourselves. We went all the way south. We went all the way north. We used Dubrovnik and Split as sort of the base stations. We went to islands off of Split, and we actually, we hired a guide. We wanted someone from a local person who's not necessarily someone who would normally do a guided description of the war back in the 1990s, but I wanted someone who literally had gone through this, and she was in the city as the bombs are raining in, and Ann and I got a great great sense of, the story, but just over 200 policemen protected that city while these bombs were coming in from the sea and coming in from over the mountains. It's an amazing story. Yeah, kind of a microcosm, really, to what poor Ukraine is having to deal with these days. Just incredible. How much did people want to talk about that when you were there?
They were, they're a little closer than we are, but it's still a couple of thousand miles away. I'm not sure if their news sources really drum up the possibility of war. We kept hearing, World War III stuff, but I think if you think about it, they had 2 world wars on their soil within the last century, in the last 100 years, just a little over. And so, they're coming at it from a different angle than we are. And so they were pretty worried about that. And it's a good bit away. But back to the Dalmatian coast, my son's actually going to be there. He goes there for a week before he heads home. He's living in Florence right now, working, but he's getting to head back over there. I wish I was going to get to go with him. It's a beautiful area.
Tell us what he's doing in Italy.
Yeah, so my son is named Harrison St. John. He's 20 years old, and he wants to go in the restaurant business. And right now he's living in Florence, working for a friend of mine.
Let's do this, Robert. We're coming to the end of the segment. Working for a friend of you living in Florence. We'll pick up right there when we come up on the other side. This is Robert St. John. We'll see you after this break.
That's great.
Welcome back to Coach. It's always fun to catch back up with my friend Robert St. John's. When we went to break, we were talking about his son is actually living in Florence right now, working with a chef. Why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah. So, he came to me probably when he was 15 and told me he wanted to get into the restaurant business. It's nothing I ever pushed on him because it's such a brutal business. If you don't just love it and are passionate about it, you're going to be miserable. So, I wanted him to do whatever he thought. And so I said, okay, we'll see. And so I waited a little while. And by the time he got to be a senior in high school, he said, that's what I want to do. And so I said, okay, here's the deal. And basically I laid out for him what I wished I would have done. I did it all backwards. But I said, all right, here's the deal. You want to get in the restaurant business, at least with me and with our company, you need to go to college for 4 years, get a degree in business with a minor in accounting. Then you need to go to culinary school, to the Culinary Institute of America up in Hyde Park, New York, so like the Harvard of cooking schools. Get a degree there, become a chef, and then you need to get out and work for other people for 2 years. I've got friends all through the business, work in the front of the house, work in the back of the house, get experience. So that's 8 years. And then at the end of that 8-year period, I say, you can come back to one of our restaurants, but you're going to start at the bottom. You're going to, doesn't matter what your title is, where you've worked, what your experience is, you're going to start at the bottom and work your way up. Otherwise, you're never going to gain anyone's respect. And he's all in on that. We've had to tweak it a little bit because his college career was so abnormal, and he, his spring semester of his freshman year, COVID hit, and so things went online and that. He'll finish his degree, but he's not going to do it in 4 years. But he was restless. He was ready to get to work, and so. Last fall, I said, all right, here's the deal. We're in the process of opening an Italian restaurant. We have one here in Hattiesburg, We're about to open one in Jackson. I said, why don't you go over and just work for my friend Paolo and cook in his restaurant and live in. He's got ever since we took that long trip, he really, really loves, especially Italy, but he loves travel. And so, he's living in a one room, third floor walk up in Florence and takes the bus 45 minutes every day into the little town of Tavernelli, which is where we stay when we're there. It's about a 45-minute bus ride for him. It's 20 minutes out of town. And so he's working and cooking. I've said forever that Paolo's mom is a lady named Giuliana. She's an Italian lady, speaks zero English. I said, if I could bring her over to America, we could make a mint in an Italian restaurant. So she'll never come to America, but I did the next best thing, which is send my son over there to cook with her. So he's learning authentic Italian recipes and having a great time living in Florence. There are, I think, 70 American universities that are affiliated over there. So there's so many young college students his age. He's met a lot of them. He's having many dates, but he works during the day. And this September he'll head off to culinary school and kind of get that track started back up again.
That's so cool. So look, hey, we only have just a little short period of time left. I'm assuming that the stresses on Extra Table and your commitment to continue increasing the number of people that you feed has been just extraordinary. But what's the latest?
So Extra Table now is we are absolutely statewide nonprofit. We're in 56 agencies all the way from North Mississippi to the coast. We ship healthy food to over 56 of those agencies every month. It costs them nothing. We go out, we raise money, we buy food, healthy food, actually at below wholesale by the tractor trailer load. We have a partner who buys that, gets it shipped in, they store it for us, and they ship it for us at no cost to Extra Table. And so when we approach an agency, we go in and say, hey, we're Extra Table. I mean, nowadays they've heard of us. In the early days, we go approach them and say, hey, we're Extra Table. We want to start sending you food. You're doing a great job getting food to those 670,000 Mississippians who need it. And they're skeptical at first. It's like, well, how much is this going to cost us? It's not going to cost you anything. We're going to raise money. We're going to buy food. We're going to ship it to you. Then do you want our donor list? Nope, don't want your donor list. We just want to ship you food. And so until they really get that first monthly delivery, they're a little skeptical. But once they get that, because we roll it directly into the agency, stock it on the shelves, and make it very easy for them. And we're tackling the hunger. If you see the Extra Table map nowadays and how much of the state we cover, it surprises me when I look. I never thought we could have achieved that, and it all comes from the hard work of our executive director, who I know you've had on your show, Martha Allen, and her team of one. There's two people that run out of a bar corner at my office here that cover a statewide charity and are shipping more than 40 tons of healthy food every month to over 56 agencies.
Yeah, Martha is a terrific person. Yes, she's been on the show more than once, and the work that you guys are doing across the state, the vision that you created, and this way this thing has exploded, it's been something to behold. But anyway, hey, Robert, it's been great to catch up with you, my friend.
Ricky, anytime.
Yeah. Congratulations on your travels, on your successes, and keep up the great work. And Godspeed to your son on his travels as well. We'll see you soon.
All right, buddy.
Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.